Good morning, Manos.
Good morning, Gran.
You are a philosophical practitioner based in Berlin, in Germany, and you do various kinds of activities as a philosophical practitioner, among them a philosophical cafe and work with groups. And I understand from what you told me that you find it very interesting to combine elements from literature and philosophical practice. Philosophical practice and literature, how can there be a connection? Can you share with us some of your work in this respect?
So, for me, philosophy and literature are like a brother-sister relationship. I mean, there is a very strong affinity between them. On the one hand, literature is a kind of philosophy, and philosophy a kind of literature. That's why we have this very interesting discipline, philosophy and literature, or philosophy of literature. So I think that the work of a philosophical practitioner can profit by literature in many levels.
Can you give an example of what you sometimes do that involves both philosophical practice and literature?
Yes. First of all, I often seek my inspiration in literature. So let's say that for my preparation as philosophical practitioner, it's very important to me and a great pleasure to make some research, to take some books from my library and take ideas and see, well, that's very interesting, I could use this poem or this dialogue or this character in the context of philosophical practice, and that can mean both the work, the face-to-face counseling, as well as a bigger context of groups or seminars.
Can you remember now a literary work, or maybe a poem or a character that you used recently?
As the most recent example was Shakespeare.
Okay.
And so the work was Richard II.
Yes.
So this is this work belongs to the history. So these are the plays about English kings. There is a very interesting dialogue, if I remember well, at the second act, and this dialogue reminds me a lot of a philosophical dialogue. Richard II has gone to fight to a war, and Queen Isabel is very anxious and has deep sorrow about his departure, because this departure is in the plot connected with various events that show that that the destiny of Richard will be a tragic one. So we have a queen who is sitting sad, perhaps on the window, and Bassi, this advisor, comes and sees her, and he asks her, what do you have, and they start a dialogue on grief. And for me, this dialogue is very important because it can be read as a kind of phenomenology of grief. I mean, how the mechanisms of grief are at work. So there is a very, very nice metaphor. So the weeping eyes, how weeping eyes disturb the seeing, and how sorrow throws its shadows and distorts the perspectives of the items surrounding the person who is sad. And
so is there a special way to use this kind of text in philosophical work? Did you use it in philosophical practice?
Very important thing about grief is that grief creates states of a confusion in the state of mind of the person who experiences sorrow. So I think it's very important to isolate this moment of confusion and to see that that a natural epiphenomenon of sorrow is this confusion. And I think it's very important for the cancellee to isolate this moment and take some distance. Because if I'm aware that in my state of sorrow there is a huge confusion and some kind of distorted perspectives surrounding me, I think this is the first step in order to try to overcome sorrow.
Okay. So if I understand what you're saying, there are several elements here in the use of this text.
Yeah.
It isolates a specific aspect of human experience,
Exactly.
in this case, the moment of grief and the confusion. It perhaps does a phenomenological analysis. In other words, it sharpens
Exactly.
the aspects of grief that are more visible. Would you also say that because it's a literary piece, it has a bigger impact on us?
Yes.
It touches us in some way?
I think so, and I think sometimes arguments are fine, but narration is finer.
Okay.
And I think here literature has a very great privilege. It's very concrete. So we have people, of course, imaginary, but somehow they are with flesh and blood, like us. And well, philosophy has to operate with abstraction. That's the gift and the curse of philosophy. That's a challenge, and I think literature operates with narration and metaphors, and I would like to insist on the later, because metaphors are very important for philosophical practice and the dialogue, because things very important and very intimate, like emotions, are often very hard to articulate. So for some people, theorists, emotions have this ineffable quality, and I think they are sometimes in philosophy we have some difficulties with terminology, and then we can look at metaphors very closely, and in this context I think it's very important the concept of absolute metaphor of Hans Blumenberg, because he says that metaphors are have also a very strong conceptual value and can provide us with orientation.
Does it ever happen to you that you present a text, a literary text, and the counselee or the group participant says, well, not exactly, a little bit. In other words, there is no full identification or self-finding in this text?
Yes, it's that happens, and that is very welcome. I have to say, because you need this a first moment of alienation, and if you read the text, you need like a bit contemplate on it, and try to think it in. To think to different contexts. I mean, let's say it vice versa. I would find it quite strange where there was an immediate identification.
Right. So maybe even by way of contrast, the counselee can find himself or herself.
I think contrast is always very, very productive.
Yeah.
Some texts of literature are so finely constructed, and they have such a philosophical value that I would consider it a loss if one did not engage them in philosophical practice.
I see. Well, I think that you're giving us, the viewers of this interview, a general message that the understanding of human experience, which is what philosophical practice is to a large extent about, can be found not only in philosophical texts, but also in other kinds of texts and other kinds of situations. Yes. Let's open our eyes to the broader horizon of writings and ideas in human culture.
Yeah, exactly, and I would say in 2 words, embrace literature.
Embrace literature. Thank you very much, Manos.
Thank you too, Rao.